Good morning. Welcome to Dig the Data. I'm Chris, and today is June 9th, 25. In this episode, we're going to be digging deep into the latest US-China trade negotiations in London, which kicked off today. You've got the Russia biggest overnight assault into the Ukraine retaliating with missiles into deep Russia, and you've got the cooling US labor data that came out on Friday. So how it all connects and to close it off, for EV electronic vehicle stocks you need to be looking at right now. So let's dive into it. First off, today we've got the US and Chinese officials meeting in Lancaster House in London. Reuters confirms this is a critical round of talks. Now, the focus is on rare earths and export controls. So, US is pushing China to ramp up exports, especially for materials vital to EV batteries and semiconductors. So, China now, in turn, is requesting reduced restrictions on its tech exports. Now, this comes days after a phone call between Trump and Xi Jinping, reported by the Washington Post, signaling a potential thaw. But let's be honest, right? The underlying mistrust is still thick. You've got just this morning, and I'm just going to pull this up quickly. Just this morning, I posted on Twitter from the Chinese US Embassy over here, talking about the US sending military aid to Taiwan. Now, Taiwan is obviously, and we can dig into that in a different conversation, but Taiwan is significantly important to the US and if to China. And if the US is going to start stepping on those toes, I think it could bring quite a spanner into the works of these talks that is happening today. Now, here's why it all matters. China controls 60% of the raw earth's minerals, right? Raw earth's global output, and any hint of resumed cooperation rattles or rallies key markets. So today we're seeing a slight Nasdaq bounce and dollar softness, clear signs of a risk-on move based on supply chain optimism. Now, over here, we've also got a bit more about the China talks coming out from Al Jazeera as the thought. So these talks are going to definitely be moving through the markets, and this is why I want to be looking at the EV and the raw mineral sector so that we can have a look at a few stocks there that should be quite interesting and at solid prices. In line with that, moving into the second segment, we've got the Russia escalates the Ukraine offensive. So now, overnight, Russia has just launched its largest drone and missile attack this year into Ukraine. Over 500 airborne missiles simultaneously. Ukraine hit military airfields deep in Russia territory. So particularly in the Nizhny Novgorod region. I'm not sure if I pronounced that correctly, but I mean, you're damaging MiG-31s, Su-34 jets. The Russia Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has also come out now and he is accusing the UK of being fully involved in these attacks, claiming that the Ukraine, and let's just think this through, right? The Ukraine would be helpless without the British support. Then this is coming from Lavrov, who's the Russian Foreign Ministry minister. And so just jumping back into this, right? Just a few days ago, we also had Zelensky using social media to plead more Western sanctions on Russia to force peace talks. You've got Zelensky playing playing the underdog here, seriously trying to like leverage a position. And if you just to take a step back from the situation for a moment, we're not just watching war anymore, right? We're watching strategic messaging. You're watching Ukraine push beyond its borders uh, and forcing NATO's hand. We're not just defending; we're forcing outcomes coming out of Zelensky, right? Russia's narrative blaming the UK pulls the West deeper into the crosshairs. So this will affect defense budgets, energy prices, and gold trajectory this week. So we need to keep an eye on the outcomes that come from some of the news articles. Let's just close that there. We've got calls for sanctions. We just went through this as well. Now, last but not least, we've also got the US jobs data coming out that came out on Friday. Now, the on Friday, the US added 131,000 jobs and the unemployment rate held at 4.2%. So Reuters is saying that the labor market is cooling off, especially in manufacturing and tech sectors. Market impacts mean that the bond yields are slightly are sliding slightly, and equities are breathing a little easier. Well, but why? Like, why is this, right? The investors are now betting the Fed will hold rates steady. So you're not looking at any rate cuts, and we're also not looking at any quantitative easing, but it is at least bringing a stable environment. And if there is something can come out of these US-China talks that is positive, I think that that could then lead into a significant rally in the markets. Now, keeping all of this in mind, looking at the current military escalations that are happening in Russia, and also looking at the trade talks with China potentially also escalating, where you have this the China embassy in the US tweeting just this morning while the talks are kicking off around these situations. We need to sort of also keep an eye on some EV stocks. So I've got four stocks for you guys to keep, and one last surprising one that I want to have a look through. And we're just going to kick it off by jumping straight into trading view over here. And I'm going to analyze them with you guys on the stream. So let's just kick off by picking this up. Sorry, 1 second. Let me just find that screen for you guys. Here we go. All right, I got it up here. Okay, so first one, obviously not a surprise, right? Tesla stock currently sitting at around $300. You had the major sell-off that came with Trump and Musk starting their arguments down 22%. Now, I'm looking at the price action here, and I'm seeing that we are still maintaining a solid uptrend. And if we do get any sort of solid pullback into that 255 region, worst case scenario, I would not be seeing price below $200 this year. So keep an eye on Tesla. I think that considering the fact that they have some significant things, they've just come out with a brand new battery, right? So, and still far away from their all-time highs. But market optimism around the US-China talks could support some serious momentum here, especially with their new battery that they're going to be launching, which will bring in 1,000 kilometers before a recharge is required, right? Now, moving into the next stock that we've got NEO, right? It's an extremely sensitive to the Chinese export policy shifts, but and you can see that we're still trading at all-time lows down here. But a if we can see some positive news coming out and you look for a shift in structure here. So just keep an eye on the stock. If price action can reclaim and shift this trend, right, you could be looking at what subsequently what you got here, right? You got your higher lows forming, and you got your all-time lows setting in place. Now, if we can just all we need to see is a little bit of break above that towards that $6 and reclaim these areas, and then they'll be sitting in a solid support line after tagging all of their downside liquidity here. Now with Neo, right, they've got massive growth potential if the Western sanctions ease and global demand returns. So keep that one on your watch list. The next one I've got for you guys, which is already showing bullish structure, is MP Materials, right? So this is probably one of the bigger gainers today. It's a US-based rare earth producer, best positioned if the US reduces its dependency on Chinese supply. So starting to look at a hedge, you've already built in a solid support here, solid support structure over there. Let's turn the screen where you can start to see that we are now flipping and sitting in a new high about $26. So as soon as we can start to see price just consolidating above that area, now you're turning support back into support, and you'll start to see that this could actually go parabolic really quickly. The next stock we've got, which I don't know if any one of you have actually looked at before, but have a look in the chats and let me know what you guys think of this one. But Albemarle Corporation, right? This is one of the world's top lithium producers, key supplier for EV battery grade lithium, and it's also already down from its $300 highs back in 2022, now looking like value for the upside. So obviously we've been in this solid downtrend. We had this sort of markup. We redistributed. We've now had that markdown phase, and we're starting to move into that accumulation period. So this could be a really nice area to start looking for price action to range in these areas, and you're picking it up at all-time lows with very, very clear invalidations underneath this period, this point of a year. And considering that the trade talks could become positive, I would see some significant movements in price action here, already reclaiming those 200-day moving averages. So another high risk bid, but with potential 400% to the upside. That's not a bad. It's not a bad one to also keep on your watch list and maybe start to DCA in these lows over here. Right now, I did promise you guys one last stock to keep on your watch list. Obviously, I always keep my promises. So here you go, right? Here's Linus Rare Earth Minerals. Okay. Now it's basically riding the rare earth tension narrative based in Australia. It's the key non-China player to watch if the trade decoupling accelerates. So if, for instance, the China and the US trade discussions happening in London at the moment do not come out with positive results, then this is the company that you want to keep an eye on. You can see that they've done significantly well coming out of COVID. They've now set in that higher low, sorry guys, and you've had that sort of 50% retrace, right? So you've pulled back into a solid support line here where we're looking for expansion to once again take place where price action can move towards the upside. You've got major resistance coming in pretty much up there. And if you were to be looking at that for a risk to reward play, right? And you were to be finding an area to DCA in that area, you've got a solid play just towards that level with potentially a 300% just towards the all-time highs, right? So really interesting one as well as a long-term bid. You can see that just coming out of potential negative news from the trade talks, Linus is already up massively this week. And I would be, it would be amiss for me not to say that if the China trade talks do go well, then I've given you guys a few companies to look at. If they do go badly, I've also now given you a company to keep an eye on. So bearing this in mind, I believe that in the energy sector is going to significantly advance over the next 5 to 10 years, especially with the expansion within AI and EV motors. So keep an eye on that. Also bear in mind that in order for the EV sector and the AI sector to significantly expand, the US needs to control the majority of the rare earth minerals coming out of Africa and a lot out of China. So hence why we've got the instability in Congo where what happened? America's now gone in and they're providing military aid. Now we've got the instability that's forming in South Africa as well. What's going to happen? They're going to provide some kind of trade agreement that then gives the carrot instead of the stick and subsequently gets hold of those rare earths. So it is a fight right now for those raw earth minerals. And we showed you at the beginning of the stream as well just how important that component is in the China trade talks happening with the US currently in Lancaster House. So considering that this is the focal point of the powers, the major powers in the world right now, I think that to look at the stocks that are currently taking advantage of that momentum, you could potentially see a lot more upside there, and hence why we're going to be covering that today. I hope you guys enjoy this show, and yeah, give me comments, give me feedback in the chat, and I'll see you on the next one. Cheers.